This threat is not brand new. Over the last year, we've been steadily ramping up our security assistance to the Iraqi government with increased training, equipping, and intelligence. Now, Iraq needs additional support to break the momentum of extremist groups and bolster the capabilities of Iraqi security forces. We will not be sending U.S. troops back into combat in Iraq, but I have asked my national security team to prepare a range of other options that could help support Iraq security forces, and I'll be reviewing those options in the days ahead.
The situation in Iraq deteriorates by the second. More northern towns are falling. Pictures have emerged of a mass execution of Iraqi men by the insurgents. And you'll shake your head hearing the country some are suggesting we need to partner with in order to save this country yet again. Save all those thoughts. We dig in. Joining us on Midpoint, Republican activist and commentator Jimmy LaSalvia joins us. Jimmy, thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And Democratic strategist, host of The Good Fight, Ben Wikler joins us as well. Ben, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Ben, let's go ahead and start with you. First of all, I'll start it with, I just talked to Lieutenant Colonel Scott Russell, and this is the thing that everybody's talking about. Partner with Iran. And I will be very honest with you, when I talked to a friend of mine who's a member of the military, served there honorably, the words out of his mouth were, "Are you crazy?"
Well, I'll tell you one thing. We do need to be talking to everybody, because this is the kind of crisis that can only be resolved ultimately through a diplomatic solution. This is something where if the United States goes in and just drops bombs willy-nilly, we'll get the same kind of result that we've had for the last 3 decades when we do that, which is more war, more conflict, and more mess. This isn't something that the United States can solve by itself.
Jimmy, I guess the question for you then is, can this be solved diplomatically?
Well, I think that no is the answer. I mean, the terrorists have been waiting for the coast to be clear for a long time, and we pulled out of there, and now we see this insurgency. I think with regards to Iran, we've got to be very, very careful, because our only common goal is making sure that there's a stable Iraq, and engaging with Iran, our enemy, and a Shiite government can only alienate our other allies in the region. And so this is a very, very complicated situation, but I think it's one that could have been predictable when you set arbitrary deadlines based on political calculations to end wars. All you have to do is wait for all the enemy has to do is wait for you to leave, and the coast is clear for them to resume their activities.
Ben, it always comes back to that calling card. We told them when we'd leave. We set the date. We said, here you go. Everything's open. Have a nice day by the time we get out of here. That we always are coming back to that as being one of the single worst things that President Obama has done. Your reaction to that is?
Well, I would say that if we had left without announcing the date we would have left, we would also be gone. The alternatives are leave and disengage from the war in Iraq, or stay forever.
But the key would be not to necessarily totally disengage. Wouldn't you agree with that, Ben? There seems to be a lot of discussion. Why totally disengage? You need to leave something behind in order to help this government stabilize.
You know, the first thing is, the big mistake we made was invading Iraq in the first place. That was the most destabilizing thing the United States could possibly do. The second thing is that a small force of Americans in Iraq, there's no guarantee that that would have prevented this from taking place by itself either. And, you know, I would be surprised if either of us wanted to send U.S. ground troops in right now for the exact same reason. There's no guarantee that that would actually prevent this from happening. This is a conflict that has been going on for centuries in different ways. This is a regional situation. It's a proxy war between different powers in certain ways. This is something where the United States is actually not at the center of this fight. And the U.S. being there in a small way or leaving isn't dispositive.
Go ahead, Jimmy. I heard you jump in. Go right ahead.
Yeah, and here's the reality. And it's something that the Obama administration and Democrats haven't gotten the message that the war on terror is different. We're not talking about the centuries-old conflicts. We're talking about terror groups who want to build their organizations in that part of the world and then attack us here. And that's the difference. That's why that's our interest. It all started over a decade ago when they attacked us here. And that's why when we look at whether we're talking about prisoner exchanges with terrorist organizations or announcing deadlines, we're not recognizing the reality that we're still engaged in a war on terror, and the terrorists want to kill us.
Okay, Jimmy, I know that a lot of people don't like to use that phrase war on terror anymore. Some people have tried to bury it. But let's be honest, it is real. There are still terrorists around the world who want to kill Americans on sight as much as they possibly can. So do you not have to go after them and try to clean them out or do whatever you can to at least make an area safe? I mean, that really is what Americans are also asking.
You know, President Obama did exactly the right thing by going after Osama bin Laden. He's been going after terrorists. Ben, I gotta stop you there, Ben. I gotta stop you there. One thing. That's old. That's old, Ben. Let's move forward. Does the United States dropping bombs in the middle of a civil war actually make America safer? That's the core question here. There is a civil war. It's spread from Syria to Iraq, and the question that all of us have to answer is: will military force right now actually reduce the threat to our country? That's a very high bar. That's a challenging call to make.
Go ahead and answer that, Jimmy. Go ahead.
When you have ISIS operatives announcing their intent to see you in New York and to harm Americans on our soil, they're not making it a secret, Ben. And the trouble is, and this is obviously a complicated situation because these networks of terrorists integrate with civilian populations, but that's the reality that we have to deal with. We have to kill them before they kill us. It's real simple.
The situation that every president and every citizen has to contend with is what is the way to protect America, to never stop protecting America in a world that's very complex. There is a civil war right now raging in Iraq and in Syria, and the options we have to choose from are the real world options. It's not like we're going to drop bombs until everyone there is dead. First of all, that would be an atrocity. And secondly, that would result in even worse attacks on the United States in the long run. We don't have the option of waving a magic wand. What we have is an analysis of an actual civil war that's happening right now in a place where we have been bombing for decades. We've been engaged in war for decades in a way that hasn't worked. So we need to look at the actual options on the table here.
Jimmy, I got to tell you, it's a fair point to make in here, Jimmy, because if you do look at it from both sides, you can say that bombs have been dropped for a long time, and we still have the same threat.
We absolutely have the same threat. However, they haven't been successful in executing the threat and harming Americans on our soil. And that is something that we have to recognize, that this war against the bad guys, the terrorists, is going to go on for a very, very, very long time. And we have to keep them at bay. So if that means that we have airstrikes and other military force to keep them from gaining a foothold in any more than they already have and strengthening, then that's what we have to do. And we have to do it in ad infinitum. I mean, it is the reality that we're living in today.
Well, I have to tell you this, and I'm going to let Ben answer this too. There are those people who are going to say the words ad infinitum bother them right away when we're talking about being there forever. I only have about a minute or so left here. I mean, Jimmy, don't you have to reach a point eventually where you have to call some kind of a date and say this is going to be it?
Well, I think what we need to do is work harder to assist the Iraqis in doing it themselves, and I think that includes helping a transition in leadership in that country. I mean, there are so many things that need to be done here.
Ben, I'm going to give you the last word on this.
Thank you. We do need to help the Iraqis to do it themselves, and the challenge in what you just said is the idea that our airstrike would solve the problem. If our airstrike would solve the problem, then great. It's just that every time we've tried that, it hasn't worked. The terrorists, most of all, want to draw the United States into wars where we make additional enemies, into disastrous quagmires. They love that. That feeds the anger against America. The United States does its best job when it focuses on job one, protecting Americans, and not having the fantasy that dropping bombs in other people's civil wars somehow makes us safer. It hasn't worked before. There's no chance, there's no reason to think it would suddenly start working now.
I think we know exactly where everybody stands on this. Jimmy LaSalvia, Ben Wikler, thank you so much for joining us. Spirited indeed, gentlemen. We will do it again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. The thing that I take right away from that is there's the phrase in there that Ben Wikler used, which is feed the anger against America. I think that pretty much everybody would agree it's kind of tough to feed an anger that is already there. It is palpable at this point around the world, and certainly with all of these different terrorist groups. We again come down to the decision that America needs to be heard on, because we are talking at this point about airstrikes. And there are those saying in the military, if you do the airstrikes correctly, you will make a difference and you will be able to slow this down, perhaps not stop it. Don't forget, social media is the way to get to us because we respond to it and we talk about your comments here, whether it's on Facebook, email, or Twitter. This is Midpoint, where every day we question everything.
Hi, I'm Mike.